The moment you pause right now is not an accident. Something in you felt the pull, the subtle tension, the quiet urgency behind these words. Because this is not just about Elon Musk, and it was never only about a delayed message. It's about timing, pressure, responsibility, and the invisible weight carried by people who stand at the edge of progress while the world watches, waits, judges, and misunderstands. For 24 hours, a message didn't move. Not because it couldn't be sent, not because the technology failed, not because the man forgot. It waited. And that waiting tells a story far more powerful than the message itself. Elon Musk is often painted as a man of speed. Rockets that land themselves. Cars that drive without hands. Satellites that blanket the sky. A mind that moves faster than comfort allows. So when something pauses in his world, when a message stops instead of launches, it means something deeper is happening beneath the surface. Speed is easy for him. Delay is intentional. People imagine emergency messages as dramatic alarms, flashing lights, sudden announcements meant to shock the world awake. But the real emergencies, the ones that matter most, are quieter. They live in the space between decision and consequence. They sit in the moment where one sentence, one word, one poorly timed release could shift markets, ignite panic, destroy trust, or save futures. And that is where this message lived for an entire day. Elon Musk understands something most people never have to face. When you speak at scale, your words don't just inform, they move systems. They move money. They move fear. They move hope. They move millions of people who don't know you, will never meet you, but believe that what you say carries weight because of what you've built. That kind of influence is intoxicating to some. To others, it is terrifying. To those who truly understand it, it is a burden. So imagine sitting with a message that feels urgent in your bones. A message you know needs to be heard. A message that could not wait forever, but also could not be rushed. Imagine knowing that pressing send too early could cause damage you cannot undo. And pressing it too late could mean missing the narrow window where it actually helps. That is not hesitation. That is responsibility. The world likes to believe that powerful people act without fear. That confidence means certainty. That vision means never doubting yourself. But real builders know something different. The higher you climb, the more you see how fragile everything actually is. The systems look strong from the ground, but from above, you see the cracks. You see how one wrong move can ripple outward in ways no one can fully predict. For 24 hours, this message lived inside that tension. There were advisors, no doubt. Legal voices weighing risks. Technical teams analyzing implications. Financial minds modeling reactions. But at the center of it all was one human being, alone with the final responsibility. Because no matter how many people you consult, the decision to speak or stay silent ultimately belongs to you. And when you are Elon Musk, silence is also a statement. People often misunderstand delay as weakness. They think urgency means immediacy. But urgency sometimes demands restraint. It demands the courage to wait when every instinct tells you to act. It demands the discipline to sit with discomfort while the world keeps spinning, unaware that something important is being held back not out of fear, but out of care. This delay wasn't about protecting an image. It wasn't about crafting the perfect narrative. It was about alignment. About ensuring that when the message finally moved, it would land where it was meant to land, not explode where it could do harm. There is a loneliness that comes with seeing the future before others do. Innovators live in that space constantly. They feel problems before the rest of the world recognizes them. They see collisions coming long before anyone hears the sound. And when you see something ahead that feels like an emergency, you have to decide how to warn people without causing chaos. That is not something you learn in textbooks. That wisdom is carved into you through mistakes, through backlash, through nights where you replay decisions over and over wondering if you did the right thing. Elon Musk has lived through those nights. He has seen what happens when words move too fast. He has also seen what happens when silence stretches too long. So when he waited 24 hours, it was because he understood exactly how narrow the path was. There is also something else people rarely talk about. Timing isn't just external, it's internal. Sometimes the delay is not about the world being ready. It's about you being ready. Ready to stand behind what you say no matter how it's received. Ready to absorb the misinterpretation, the criticism, the headlines stripped of nuance. Ready to hold your ground when the noise comes, because it always comes. The internet doesn't listen. It reacts. It doesn't reflect, it amplifies. A message released into that environment doesn't belong to you anymore. It becomes everyone's. It gets twisted, clipped, reframed, turned into memes, weaponized by people who never cared about its meaning in the first place. Knowing that, choosing when to release something important becomes an act of strategy, not ego. During those 24 hours, the message was likely rewritten more than once. Not to soften it, but to sharpen it. Not to hide truth, but to make sure the truth survived contact with the world. Every word matters when millions are listening for different reasons. Some want reassurance. Some want controversy. Some want proof that their fears are justified. Some want hope, and hope is fragile. Elon Musk has built companies around impossible timelines and relentless forward motion, but even he knows that people don't move at the speed of technology. Minds need time. Context needs space. When you drop something too suddenly, people don't hear the message, they hear the shock. They don't absorb meaning, they absorb emotion. So sometimes, the most urgent thing you can do is slow down. There is also the question of consequence. An emergency message is not just information, it is a call to attention. It tells people, this matters now. And when you pull that lever, you don't get to control what people do with that urgency. Markets react. Governments notice. Media narratives shift. Competitors respond. Allies reassess. All of that has to be considered, not out of fear, but out of respect for the scale of impact. That 24-hour delay was a reminder that real power doesn't rush to be seen. It waits until it can be useful. For those watching from the outside, it's easy to romanticize the moment. To imagine a dramatic countdown, a last-second decision, a finger hovering over a button. But the reality is quieter and heavier. It's pacing in a room. It's staring at a screen. It's asking yourself, am I helping, or am I just speaking? And sometimes, choosing not to speak immediately is the most honest answer. There's a lesson here that goes far beyond Elon Musk. How many times have you felt an urgency to say something, to act, to respond, only to realize later that waiting changed everything? How many messages in your own life would have landed better if they had been delayed just long enough for clarity to catch up with emotion? We live in a world that rewards instant reaction, but wisdom still moves at its own pace. Elon Musk's delay wasn't about hesitation. It was about precision. Precision is underrated. It doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral. But it builds things that last. When the message finally moved, it did so with intention. It carried the weight of those 24 hours inside it. Every pause, every reconsideration, every internal argument shaped it into something more stable. More grounded, more capable of surviving the storm that would inevitably follow. People often ask what separates visionaries from everyone else. They expect the answer to be intelligence, ambition, resources, or risk tolerance. But one of the real differences is this: visionaries respect timing. They understand that being right too early can look exactly like being wrong. They know that truth without context can cause harm, and urgency without alignment can create chaos. So when you hear that an emergency message was delayed, don't assume failure. Assume gravity. Assume that someone understood the cost of being heard and chose to pay it carefully, in a culture addicted to immediacy. Waiting is a radical act. It signals confidence, not doubt. It says, I don't need to rush to prove anything. I need to make sure this matters. That is what those 24 hours represent, not silence, but stewardship, not fear, but foresight, not weakness, but control. And perhaps the most important part of this story is not the message itself, but the reminder it offers to everyone watching. You don't have to react instantly to be relevant. You don't have to speak first to be right. You don't have to move fast to move forward. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is pause, breathe, and choose your moment with intention, because when you finally speak, the world listens differently. The pause didn't end when the message was finally sent. In many ways, that's when the real wait began. Because once words leave you, they no longer belong to you, they belong to interpretation. And Elon Musk knows better than most that interpretation is where meaning is either protected or destroyed. What most people never see is what happens immediately after a message like that moves into the world. The silence that follows is louder than the noise before it. Notifications explode. Screens light up. Reactions arrive faster than understanding. Some people lean forward, trying to grasp the deeper implication. Others rush to frame it as controversy, conflict, or confirmation of whatever story they already wanted to tell. That is the price of being heard at scale. The 24-hour delay wasn't just about crafting the message. It was about preparing for the aftermath. Because an emergency message doesn't end when it's delivered, it begins a chain reaction. And once that chain starts, you can't stop it. You can only stand inside it. Elon Musk has learned this through experience, not theory. He has watched how a single sentence can wipe billions from markets or ignite belief in something that didn't exist the day before. He has seen how truth can be drowned by headlines and how nuance can vanish in seconds. That kind of awareness changes how you speak. It changes how long you wait. It changes how carefully you choose your moment. There is also something deeply human in that delay that rarely gets acknowledged. Even people who build rockets and reshape industries still feel doubt. Not the paralyzing kind, but the responsible kind. The kind that asks, "Am I seeing this clearly?" The kind that checks ego at the door and listens one more time before acting. That doubt doesn't weaken leadership, it sharpens it. In those 24 hours, the message wasn't frozen. It was alive. It was evolving as new information came in, as consequences were mapped, as internal alarms were tested against reality. True urgency isn't loud, it's focused. It strips away unnecessary drama and leaves only what truly matters, and what mattered here wasn't attention. It was impact. The public often assumes that powerful figures are immune to pressure, that their confidence shields them from second guessing. But the truth is almost the opposite. The higher the stakes, the heavier the pressure. When millions of people are indirectly affected by what you say, silence becomes a tool just as powerful as speech. That delay also reflects something uncomfortable about our modern world. We demand instant answers to complex problems. We want clarity without patience. We want certainty without process. But real solutions don't obey those demands. They take time to align, time to mature, time to become safe enough to release. Elon Musk operates in spaces where mistakes are not symbolic, they are physical. Rockets explode. Systems fail. Consequences are real and immediate. That environment trains a different relationship with urgency. You don't act fast to feel important. You act right to stay alive. so when an emergency message waited, it wasn't because the emergency faded. It was because rushing would have turned urgency into recklessness. And recklessness is the one thing progress cannot afford. There's a quiet discipline required to wait when the world is watching. To resist the pull of relevance. To choose accuracy over applause. That discipline doesn't come from fear of criticism, it comes from respect for reality. And reality doesn't care how viral you are. It only responds to what actually works. As people dissected the delay, speculated, filled the silence with theories, the truth remained simple and unglamorous. Timing matters more than noise. The right message at the wrong moment becomes distortion. The right moment gives the message a chance to breathe, and maybe that's why this story resonates so deeply. Because on some level, everyone knows what it feels like to hold something important inside and wonder when, or if, it should be released. Everyone has their own version of a delayed message. A truth not yet spoken. A decision waiting for clarity. A step paused not because of fear, but because it deserves respect. Elon Musk's 24 hours remind us that restraint is not weakness. It is a form of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. It works quietly, behind the scenes, shaping outcomes before anyone realizes what was avoided. The message waited because it had to. Because once spoken, it could never be taken back. Because urgency without wisdom destroys more than it saves, and when it finally arrived, it carried with it the unseen weight of patience, something far rarer, and far more powerful, than speed. What followed after the message reached the world was not clarity, but exposure. Exposure of how differently people hear the same words. Some felt urgency turn into fear. Others felt it become validation. Some dismissed it entirely, while others held on to it as a warning they had been waiting for. And through all of that noise, one truth became unmistakable: the delay had been necessary, because the reaction proved how fragile collective understanding really is. Elon Musk has always existed at the intersection of vision and resistance. Every step forward invites skepticism. Every warning invites disbelief. That's the paradox of being ahead of the curve. By the time others catch up, the moment has already passed. This is why timing is everything. Speak too early, and you're called dramatic. Speak too late, and you're blamed for not acting sooner. During those 24 hours, the message was weighed against that paradox. Not just whether it was true, but whether it could be heard. Truth that cannot be received is often treated as noise, and noise is ignored. That is a lesson learned through scars, not theory. There's also the question of trust. When someone like Elon Musk speaks, people don't just evaluate the content, they evaluate the source. They ask themselves whether to believe, whether to doubt, whether to follow. That trust is built slowly and lost quickly. One poorly timed message can undo years of credibility. That is why restraint becomes a form of protection, not of ego, but of mission. Behind the scenes, there were likely moments where sending the message immediately would have felt relieving. Getting it out. Letting the responsibility shift from internal pressure to public discourse. But real leadership doesn't chase relief. It accepts discomfort for the sake of outcome. That discomfort is something most people never see. It doesn't trend. It doesn't get applause. It's the quiet burden of knowing that doing the right thing often feels worse in the short term than doing the easy thing. The world often frames Elon Musk as fearless, even reckless. But moments like this reveal a different reality. Reckless people don't wait. Reckless people confuse speed with courage. This delay was not the absence of courage, it was courage refined. There is a difference between urgency and panic. Panic demands immediate release. Urgency demands correctness. Panic wants attention. Urgency wants resolution. Those 24 hours were spent separating one from the other. As the reactions unfolded, it became clear that no amount of preparation could control how the message would be used. Some would twist it. Some would sensationalize it. Some would minimize it. That was inevitable. What mattered was that when it left his hands, it was as solid as it could be, and that solidity came from waiting. This moment also reflects something deeper about the kind of future Elon Musk is trying to build. Whether it's space exploration, artificial intelligence, energy, or communication, the stakes are global. Decisions ripple across borders and generations. In that context, urgency must be balanced with stewardship. You don't just ask, "Can I?" You ask, "Should I now?" That question shaped the delay. There is a temptation in modern culture to equate immediacy with authenticity, as if the first reaction is the truest one. But anyone who has lived long enough knows that the first reaction is often the loudest, not the wisest. Wisdom shows up after you sit with the problem, after emotion settles, after you've listened more than you've spoken. Those 24 hours were a form of listening, listening to data. Listening to advisors. Listening to intuition. Listening to the weight of consequence, and when you understand that, the delay stops looking like a mystery and starts looking like maturity. Because the real emergency wasn't the content of the message. The real emergency would have been releasing it without respect for its power. In a world addicted to instant response, patience becomes disruptive. It forces people to slow down, to wonder, to reflect. And sometimes, that pause is the only space where understanding can actually grow, so the message waited. Not because the moment wasn't urgent, but because urgency deserves discipline. And that discipline is what separates those who react from those who lead. And when the noise began to settle, when the first wave of reactions exhausted itself, something quieter emerged beneath it all: recognition. Not agreement, not praise, not universal understanding, but recognition that the message had landed exactly where it was meant to. Not everywhere. Not for everyone. But for those who were ready to hear it, that is the part people often miss. Powerful messages are not designed to convince the entire world. They are designed to reach the right minds at the right moment. The delay wasn't about maximizing reach, it was about protecting meaning. Because meaning diluted by haste becomes spectacle, and spectacle rarely leads to change, Elon Musk understands that the future isn't built by crowds reacting in unison. It's built by small groups thinking clearly while others argue. That's why the message didn't need to be loud. It needed to be precise. It needed to survive beyond the first headline, beyond the initial outrage or excitement, and still make sense when the dust settled. Those 24 hours acted like a filter. They slowed the moment just enough to separate impulse from intention. People who wanted drama moved on quickly. People who wanted substance stayed. That alone justified the wait. There's also something deeply symbolic about a delayed emergency in a world obsessed with immediacy. It exposes how poorly we've learned to sit with tension. We want resolution instantly. We want certainty delivered cleanly and quickly. But the most important transitions in history never worked that way. They unfolded through pauses, recalibrations, and moments where nothing seemed to happen, until everything did. This message belonged to that category. It wasn't meant to shock you into fear. It wasn't meant to flatter you into comfort. It was meant to place responsibility back where it belongs, on awareness. And awareness cannot be rushed. It arrives when the mind is quiet enough to receive it. The delay also revealed something else that matters deeply in leadership. Restraint is a signal. It tells those paying close attention that the person speaking is not addicted to attention. That they are willing to endure speculation, criticism, even misunderstanding, rather than speak prematurely. That kind of restraint builds a different kind of trust, the slow kind, trust that doesn't rely on charisma, trust that doesn't need constant reinforcement, trust rooted in consistency, not performance. By waiting, Elon Musk didn't weaken the message. He anchored it. And perhaps the most important takeaway from all of this has nothing to do with him at all. It has to do with you, with anyone living in a world that demands instant answers while quietly punishing thoughtful ones. The story of this delay is a reminder that not everything urgent must be immediate, and not everything immediate is important. There are moments in life when waiting is not avoidance, it is alignment. There are messages you carry that need the right timing to become truth instead of noise. There are decisions you feel pressured to make that deserve patience more than speed. And there are times when silence is not absence, but preparation. The world will always reward those who react fastest. But history remembers those who chose their moment. That is what happened here. A message waited, pressure built, silence spoke, and when the words finally arrived, they carried something rare inside them, not panic, not performance, but intention. That is why the delay mattered. Not because something went wrong, but because someone understood how much was at stake, and that understanding changed everything.